Hello there, I'm Jonathan Rowson, and this course is about the seven deadly chess sins. But first, a little bit about me. I'm what's called an inactive grandmaster. Some say, "Are you a retired grandmaster?" I say, "No, I'm not retired. I still play. I get online and play Blitz like everyone else. I show up at tournaments and hope for the best still sometimes. I still love the game, but I'm no longer playing every day. These days I work mostly in I'm a philosopher by academic background, and I work on public policy issues, particularly climate change. That's my kind of day job. But it's all the more reason why it was a pleasure to do this course, because the book on which it's based, The Seven Deadly Chess Sins, is, well, to my surprise, it was very popular and people seem to like it. It's been praised by ridiculously strong players like Leveronian and people like that have loved it. But it's also really written for anyone. It's very much a book for any chess player, because it's about the sort of fundamental relationship between what a human being is and how difficult it is to play chess. So it's an unusual book in that sense. And that speaks to my own background, trying to make sense of chess sort of philosophically and psychologically. The title, The Seven Deadly Chess Sins, is worth just pondering for a second. Of course, for those who are theologically informed, the seven sins are a sort of ancient idea about human weakness, human tendency to do certain things they shouldn't. But in a more modern conception, and this is kind of interesting for chess players, one of the best definitions of sin is not some kind of yummy transgression like eating too many chocolates or doing naughty things. No, sin is something more like the human propensity to F things up, right? That's what it's about. It's about the fact that we're fallible, the fact that we're all fallible. Even if you're a grandmaster, you still make lots of mistakes. The question is, where do the mistakes come from, right? You might just say, well, you just didn't see stuff. And that's sort of true, but there is a certain depth to this conversation as well. And that's what this book is about. It's about looking at the sort of preconditions of error. It's not just the mistakes. It's like, what are the root causes? What are the root causes in your psyche? What are the root causes in your mind and how the sort of cognition works, in your emotions and how you feel at the board, and in your kind of habits and your patterns of attention as well. So for all those reasons, the Seven Deadly Chess Sins is a bit different. But it fits within the chessable orbit, because once you've read and understood some of these psychological fallibilities that we have, you need to see how they manifest on the board. And that's what the course is about, really. I look at each of the sins. Thinking is roughly the problems we have with, not so much that thinking is wrong, but that the nature of thinking, because it relies on perception and memory, and because it's infused with emotion and infused with desire, it often goes wrong, right? And so to understand a bit more clearly how we think helps us to avoid some of the errors that arise from thinking. But it's not to say that you should stop thinking, right? That's not the message. Blinking, likewise, don't stop blinking. Very bad for you. But the second sin, blinking, is about missing key moments in the game. Blinking, they're gone, kind of thing. Wanting, the third sin, is desire. The craven human desire for things, usually victory, but sometimes to win a certain pawn or to get your pieces in a certain kind of formation. We attach and fixate to the things we desire, and in a way that doesn't always help us play correctly. Again, desire is human. It's the whole point of the Seven Deadly Chess Sins, is that you're looking at things that are in our natures. Materialism. We learn how to move the pieces, and what do we learn next? Typically, how much they're worth, right? Pawns are 1, knights are roughly 3, bishops are roughly 3, rooks are 5, queen is 9, king is infinite value, right? But it's kind of partially true, but it's not the whole truth. The whole truth is that the value of the piece is what it's doing in the position, right? The value of the piece is entirely a matter of context and situation. And real skill in chess is not just counting the pieces, but really seeing the forces at work, seeing the harmony between them, seeing what can be achieved and what can't be, based on who is there, and not just comparing what you've lost and what you've gained, but looking at the board, seeing what's actually happening. And so materialism is about trying to contend with that very natural desire to hold on to our material and to evaluate positions from a purely material basis and getting beyond that. Then egoism, all about I, me. Chess is very much about how we orient ourselves towards our own ideas much more than our opponents. It's particularly true at lower levels. We keep thinking, I want to go there, and I want to do this, and I want to do that, and then I'm going to do this. But the thing about chess is there's this other player who has the same set of ideas. Now, two things about that. One is, to play well, you really have to factor in your opponent a bit more into your reasoning. But the other thing is, you've got to remember that they're fallible too, that they'll have their own attachments, their own desires, their own way of seeing it. And so learning to overcome egoism, you can't really overcome these things, by the way, not fully. You can only become aware of them, and therefore their impact on you is a bit less. So for all those things, all apply to egoism. You're trying to get beyond that sort of simple, subjective, only about me, to factoring in the opponent, and then trying to get some kind of dynamic where your moves are informed by their moves, and your quality of play will go up as a result. Then perfectionism. Really, it's about time trouble, but it's not just that. It's the whole spirit of trying to get things just too perfect, letting the best be the enemy of the good. We don't want to do that in chess. We want to find a pragmatic rhythm where, yes, there are moments to really look for the right move, but in general, you're looking for good moves, and you're looking for moves that keep moving towards, the flow, the outcome you're looking for, but not pausing at every juncture to get just the perfect move. How does that come about? What are the sort of psychological preconditions of that? In the course, I speak about 18 different causes of time trouble, for example, that you might want to know about. And then finally, looseness is kind of just like wobbling, falling apart, just kind of your nervous system collapsing. And one of the ways that manifests is through what we call losing the plot or losing the thread. And that's where you lose track of the story of the game, lose track of what you're meant to be doing. And that happens to all of us. It's something we need to understand better once we've gone off the path, how to get back on it. So that's about looseness. So those are the 7 sins, and that's what the book's about. I've said also why it works well in Chessable, because I think you need to check these psychological issues in the context of real positions. So being tested is a good way to remind yourself, okay, I didn't get that right. Why exactly? And there's a chess answer to that, and then there's a kind of deeper answer to do with the material in the course about the 7 deadly chess sins that I've described, these preconditions of errors, right? We can look at an example in thinking, for example. I'm going to look at a game between Rosenthal and Ralph Appel because it's a bit surprising, and but I want to show it in juxtaposition with a game of Smyslov and Rejewski, where they look very different at first blush, but I'm using this juxtaposition to show how pattern recognition works and show what an important feature of the game it is, but why it's not entirely automatic, why it comes to some players and you may have to sort of be a bit flexible with yourself to see the same pattern in a very different context, and that this is a kind of function of expertise. So that sounds a bit abstract. Let's show you what I mean. So if we look at the exercise initially, the question was, what does white play? And the answer was A4. Now, it's not like it's the only move by any means, of course, but it's a way of getting you to think differently. Black, it's partly about preempting, or rather preventing, Black's main idea of B5, A5, and B4. Now, if Black was alert here, he may do something like B6. If he goes A6 immediately, White will possibly go A5 to fix that structure. But if Black goes B6 and A6 and B5, that would have been better. However, Black actually played differently, played Queen D7, and the game moved on. Queen D1, and then next page. This is where it gets interesting. White starts to go Queen A1, and then the game is defined by this maneuver now, which I think is a bit shocking in its own way, but it just shows the sort of potential in the position and how difficult it is to see such moves because of our preconceptions about what's going on. So Queen A3 is a great move, but if you're uninitiated, you might think, oh my God, how on earth could you weaken your pawns? Doubled A pawns, look at them, they're ghastly, but they're not. You can't even get close to them as Black. And in the meantime, White's rooks are really happy. They've suddenly got this juicy B file to get stuck into. Rook's going to B5, C5, the other rook to B5, the D5 pawn is weak. crash. Black's position is really under pressure now. The weak pawns, so-called, are not really at all, right? And that's important because it's also in the course, by the way. You can see, we look at it in more depth in the full position here. Come back to this part. What I like about it is once you get here, Black's already in a lot of pressure. It might even be a decisive mistake to take the queen. Didn't have to take it. You can let White capture, but of course, quite hard to resist if you're Black doubling those a-pawns. What I'm curious to show you, though, is that Queen a3, just quickly skip to the end of the game, because of course in the video we speak about these things in more depth. White gets the juicy square for the king on d4, brings his rook. Sorry, I went past that a little too quickly. In this position, rook b6, lovely tactical resource, activates the rook, brings the rook, infiltrates the Black position, and of course the rook can't be taken because of a7. Bishop g8, rook f6, and now king coming to the majestic square in the center of the board. Black takes the pawn because he runs out of other ideas. White plays rook d6, very elegant. He's going to take on d5 next move. It might not look like the end of the world as we know it, but it really is. And Black doesn't feel fine at all. It's actually over. He resigned. So that was that. But remember Queen a3. Where did that come from? How did Rosenthalis think of that idea? For that, we need to go back. And I want to show the next chapter, which we'll get in thinking. Go back here. From here, Smyslov-Rajewski, like I say, was a key. Now, it might look like a very different position. You might think this is not related at all. And this is what the sin of thinking sort of points towards. It's like, what is it about our minds that mean that some players see a pattern here and some don't? Some have a memory of a previous position that is sufficiently well understood that it can be applied in a very different context. Others, A, may not have the position at all because they've never seen it before, because many people won't know this game. But B, even if they did know it, they wouldn't make the connection. And this is a function of chess skill. First of all, to have lots of patterns available through your chess education. But beyond that, it's also just to know how to apply them, to have the nimbleness and flexibility and agility of mind to do that. In this position, Smyslov took on e6, which would normally be a mistake, giving a good bishop for a relatively passive knight. But he's seen this follow-up, queen h4, right? Now you see the parallel now. Queen d1 to a1 to a3 in Rosenthalis, queen to h4 by Smyslov. Now, very different positions, but because of this, Black can't actually protect the d-pawn now. The game, in many different ways, whether Black takes and loses the pawn immediately, or plays queen d7, allowing queen d8 check, and the queen's coming off that way, White wins the pawn, and with it, quite quickly, the game. And what's interesting is that Rosenthalis very explicitly says that it was because of this game that he saw queen a3. But the funny thing is, in this game, it's not as though the queen's coming off led to the rooks jumping through the G file as they did in the B file in the Rosenthalis game. It's quite different. So in this book, and particularly in this chapter, we look at things like this, about what we learn, how we see the position, how we apply what we know to what's in front of us, why that sometimes works really well and sometimes doesn't, and how we begin to get beyond that in terms of the things we have to understand, do at the board, and learn at home. So that's something about how to think of the book. It's it's about the psychology of chess, but not so much the competitive psychology. There's a bit of that, some sports psychology, some kind of cognitive psychology about how we see the position, the perceptual side of it, the emotional side of it too. But really, it's more about the spirit of the game. It's also about things like desire and where we are when we're playing, like this illusion of the rational player who just works out the moves. It's not true, right? We're profoundly emotional creatures. And even very strong players get moved and sort of swayed and irritated and angry and frustrated and all of this stuff. And that's a big part of chess. But people don't tend to write about it, except kind of in passing. So what's different about this book or this course is that I I really tried to take those questions seriously. Now, I was a much younger man when I wrote it. I was in my early 20s, and there's a certain youthful naivety to some of the ideas in it. But even today, like 2 decades later, I'm quite proud of it. There's a sense in which it was a serious effort to make sense of the questions that troubled me at the time, when I'd just become a grandmaster as well. So I was still full of enthusiasm for the game, still trying to understand it better. And I know this book's been, liked by players of very, very big range of strengths, from sort of elite grandmaster to sort of complete beginner, and even some non-chess players have liked aspects of the book. So for all of those reasons, as a course, it's in some ways brought to life even more, because you don't just have the text to read, you also have the puzzles to study and the game fully available for you, and then the videos to watch to get my sort of updated view of how things are. Why would you want to buy this series? What would be in it for you? Now, honestly, if you're the kind of player who thinks, I don't care how it happens, I just want to get better results, I simply want to win more games, I want a higher rating and all that means, then this book could well help you, right? It could, because it does help to sort of restructure your thinking in certain ways. It allows you to understand what's going wrong much more clearly. And I think for all those players, it works, and it has a certain value. But I also think if you're the kind of player who wants chess to be a lifelong friend, and if you're the kind of player who beyond the wholesome discipline wants to be a little bit gentle with yourself too, and enjoy the game and not sort of kill yourself about not winning every time, this course is also very forgiving, because it shows you that these mistakes are shared. It shows you the underlying causes of the misperceptions and miswantings and misunderstandings that arise over the board. So for all those reasons, I hope you spend some time with it and enjoy it. And in the process of doing this, I have enjoyed it too. It's been fun, kind of memory lane for me, but also a reminder of the joy of chess. And that's something that we hopefully all share. Thank you.